A Mafia boss stopped for a routine meeting. Then he saw her, his ex-lover who vanished 5 years ago, now begging on the street with 2 kids. Kids who had his green eyes. What he didn't know, nothing about that night was what it seemed. Vincent Romano didn't do bakeries. Not anymore. Not since his mother died. But tonight, business pulled him to the crumbling east side of the city, where broken streetlights flickered like dying stars and the smell of stale bread mixed with exhaust fumes. His black Mercedes idled outside Moretti's bakery, a tired shop with peeling paint and a neon sign that buzzed angry and red. "You sure this guy's reliable?" Vincent asked, adjusting his cufflinks. The silver glinted under the dashboard light. His driver, a mountain of a man named Sal, nodded. "Marco vetted him, personally, boss. Says he's got intel on the Corsetti family's weapons shipment. Real stuff. Dates, locations, the works." Vincent checked his watch. 9:47 p.m. The informant was late. He hated waiting. "Give him 3 more minutes," Vincent said, his voice flat as steel. "Then we leave." Sal grunted in agreement. Vincent's eyes drifted toward the bakery entrance, scanning for threats out of habit. 20 years in this life had taught him one truth: danger rarely announced itself. It whispered. It hid in shadows. It wore familiar faces. That's when he saw her. A woman sat hunched on the sidewalk near the bakery door, her thin frame draped in a coat 3 sizes too large. 2 small children clung to her sides like barnacles, tiny hands gripping her sleeves, as if letting go meant drowning. The woman held out a cardboard sign, the words barely visible in the dim light. "Please help. Hungry." Vincent's jaw tightened. He'd seen 1,000 beggars in this city. Hell, he'd made some of them. But something about this woman froze the blood in his veins. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear. That delicate gesture, so painfully familiar it felt like a punch to the gut. "Boss." Sal's voice came from far away. Vincent didn't answer. He pushed open the car door and stepped onto the cracked pavement, his Italian leather shoes crunching on broken glass. The November wind bit at his face, but he barely felt it. He moved closer. The woman's head was down, her face hidden by a tangle of dark hair streaked with premature gray. One of the children, a little boy, looked up at Vincent with wide, curious eyes. Green eyes. Impossible. Vincent's breath caught. Those eyes stared back at him like mirrors, reflecting a shade of emerald he'd only ever seen in one place, his own reflection. The second child, a girl, peeked out from behind the woman's arm. Same eyes. Same sharp, intelligent gaze that seemed far too old for her tiny face. "Clara," Vincent said, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman's entire body went rigid. Slowly, painfully, she lifted her head. 5 years had carved deep lines into her face. Her cheeks were hollow, her skin pale as moonlight. But those lips, chapped and trembling, were the same ones that had once smiled against his neck in the dark, whispering promises neither of them kept. Clara Martinez. The woman who vanished with $5 million of his money. The woman he'd searched for across 3 continents before finally accepting she was either dead or smart enough to stay hidden forever. The woman he'd loved once, in the stupid, reckless way men love before the world teaches them better. Vincent, his name cracked in her throat like breaking glass. For 3 seconds, maybe 4, neither of them moved. The city hummed around them, car horns, distant sirens, the bakery's door chime as a customer left with a bag of day-old bread. But in that small circle of cracked sidewalk, time stopped. Then the little boy tugged on Clara's sleeve. "Mama, I'm cold."
"Mama."
Vincent's eyes snapped to the children. 4 years old, maybe 5. The timeline fit too perfectly, sliding into place like a bullet in a chamber. "Get in the car," Vincent said. "Vincent, please."
"Get in the
car." Each word came out sharp enough to cut. Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't move. "I can explain," You can explain in the car, or you can explain to the cops when I call them for theft and fraud. Vincent's hand moved to his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. Your choice. You've got 5 seconds. It was a bluff. He'd never involved the police in his business, but Clara didn't know that. Or maybe she did, and she was just tired. Tired of running, tired of being cold, tired of watching her children go hungry. She struggled to her feet, pulling the twins up with her. The little girl whimpered. Sal had already opened the rear door of the Mercedes, his face carefully blank. He'd been with Vincent long enough to know when to ask questions and when to shut up and drive. Vincent watched Clara shuffle toward the car, each step slow and painful. She'd lost weight, too much weight. Her jeans hung loose on her hips, cinched tight with a frayed belt. When had she eaten last? Yesterday? 3 days ago. He hated that he cared. The twins climbed into the back seat first, their small faces pressed against the leather interior like they'd never seen anything so clean. Clara followed, moving like a woman approaching a firing squad. Vincent slid in beside them and pulled the door shut. The interior light cast everything in harsh yellow, making Clara's exhaustion even more visible. She kept her eyes down, one arm wrapped protectively around each child. Drive, Vincent told Sal. Take us home. What about the informant? Sal asked. Marco can handle it. Vincent's voice was ice. Go. The Mercedes pulled away from the curb, leaving Moretti's bakery and its broken neon sign behind. Vincent's phone buzzed. Probably Marco, wondering where the hell he was, but he ignored it. His eyes fixed on the children. The boy had fallen asleep almost instantly, his head lolling against Clara's shoulder. The girl stayed awake, those green eyes, his eyes, watching Vincent with an unnerving intensity. What are their names? Vincent asked. Clara's voice was barely audible. Luca and Sofia. Italian names. Of course. How old?
4.
They'll be 5 in January. Vincent did the math. 5 years ago, Clara disappeared in late August. If she'd been pregnant then. Are they mine? The question hung in the air like smoke. Clara finally looked at him, and in her eyes, Vincent saw something he hadn't expected. Not fear, not defiance, but bone-deep exhaustion. Yes, she whispered. They're yours. The car filled with silence. Outside, the city blurred past, a smear of lights and shadows, a world Vincent had conquered block by bloody block. He'd built an empire from nothing, turned himself from a poor kid in Little Italy into a name people whispered with respect and fear. But sitting in the back of his own car, staring at 2 children who had his eyes and a woman who'd once held his heart, Vincent Romano felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Completely, utterly lost. The villa sat on 12 acres of manicured darkness, hidden behind iron gates and security cameras that saw everything. Vincent had bought it 5 years ago, right after Clara disappeared, telling himself he needed more space, better protection. He'd never admitted he was building a fortress against ghosts. Sal pulled the Mercedes into the circular driveway, gravel crunching under the tires. The house loomed ahead, all white stone and tall windows that glowed warm against the night sky. Clara stared at it like she was looking at a palace, or a prison. This way, Vincent said, stepping out. Clara carried Sofia while Luca stumbled along beside her, half asleep and clinging to his mother's coat. Vincent led them through the front entrance, past the marble floors and crystal chandelier that his interior designer swore was tasteful, but mostly just looked expensive. Marco appeared in the hallway, phone in hand, his expression tight. Boss, the informant. Later, Vincent cut him off. Clear out the East study. Make sure nobody disturbs us. Marco's eyes flicked to Clara and the children, then back to Vincent. 20 years of loyalty meant Marco knew when to swallow his questions. Yes, boss. 5 minutes later, Vincent stood in his study while Clara perched on the edge of a leather armchair, the twins pressed against her like shields. Someone, probably Maria, the housekeeper, had brought warm milk and cookies. The children devoured them with desperate efficiency. Vincent poured himself whiskey, neat. His hands were steady, but his mind raced like an engine about to explode.
Start talking, he said.
Clara's fingers twisted together in her lap. I didn't steal your money. $5 million vanished the same night you did. My accountant found the transfer, your signature, your access codes. It wasn't me, her voice cracked. Vincent, I swear on their lives, it wasn't me. The invocation of the children stopped him. In their world, you didn't swear on your kids unless you meant it. That oath was sacred, even among thieves and killers. Vincent took a long drink. The whiskey burned, but not enough. Then explain. 5 years, Clara. 5 years of nothing. Clara's eyes glistened. That night, the night the money disappeared, I came to your office to surprise you. I'd just found out I was pregnant, she paused, her breath shaky. I was going to tell you. I was happy. Vincent's chest tightened.
He remembered that night.
He'd been in Miami, closing a deal with the Colombians. He'd called her twice, but she hadn't answered. I found an envelope on your desk, Clara continued. Inside was a photograph of me leaving the doctor's office. Someone had circled my stomach in red marker. And there was a note. What did it say? Dead women don't have babies, Clara's voice broke. There were details, Vincent. They knew where my sister lived, where my mother got her groceries. They knew everything. Vincent's jaw clenched. Who sent it? I don't know. There was no signature, no name. Just that picture, and those words. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I panicked. I grabbed some clothes and left. I was going to call you from somewhere safe, explain everything, but then I saw the news. The money was gone, and they were saying I took it. So you ran. What choice did I have? Clara's voice rose, waking Luca, who whimpered softly. She lowered her tone, stroking his hair. Your enemies thought I betrayed you. Your people thought I betrayed you. If I came back, I was dead either way. So, I disappeared. Vincent studied her face, searching for lies. He'd interrogated hundreds of men, learned to spot deception in the twitch of an eye, the flutter of a pulse. But Clara just looked broken, a woman who'd been running so long she'd forgotten what solid ground felt like. Where did you go? Everywhere. Nowhere. Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I used fake IDs, paid cash for everything. I had the twins in a clinic in Nevada, no records, no names. For 3 years, we moved every few months. Then my last identity got flagged. The money ran out. And here we are. Sophia tugged on Clara's sleeve. Mama, can we sleep now? Clara's face crumbled.
Soon, baby. Soon.
Vincent set down his glass. The logical part of his brain, the part that had kept him alive this long, screamed that this could all be an elaborate lie. A play for sympathy, for protection, for a way back into his life and his wallet. But the twins' eyes didn't lie. And neither did the hollowness in Clara's cheeks, the desperate truth in her voice. Marco, Vincent called. The door opened immediately. Marco had clearly been standing just outside, listening. Take them to the guest suite in the north wing. Make sure they have everything they need, clothes, food, whatever the kids want. Post 2 guards outside, discreet. Nobody goes in or out without my approval. Clara stood quickly. Vincent, I'm not a prisoner. No, Vincent interrupted, his voice softer than he intended. You're not. But until I figure out what really happened, you're not leaving either. For your safety. And theirs. Clara searched his face, and whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. As Marco led them out, Luca turned back. Are you our daddy? The question hit Vincent like a bullet. Clara froze. Marco pretended he hadn't heard. Vincent crouched down, bringing himself to the boy's level. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. Same nose, same stubborn set of a jaw. Yeah, kid, Vincent said quietly. I think I am. Luca smiled, small, tentative, but real, and then followed his mother out the door. Vincent stood alone in his study, surrounded by leather and mahogany and the trappings of power. None of it felt like enough anymore. Vincent didn't sleep. He sat in his study until dawn, the whiskey bottle half empty beside him, replaying every moment of the night Clara vanished. The deal in Miami, the frantic calls from his accountant, the way his entire operation had nearly collapsed when $5 million evaporated like smoke. He'd rebuilt. He always rebuilt. But he'd never found the truth. At 6 a.m., Marco knocked twice and entered without waiting for permission. "The kids are still asleep," Marco said, setting down a folder. "Clara's awake. She hasn't left the room." Vincent opened the folder. Inside were basic details Marco had already pulled: Clara's last known addresses, the fake IDs she'd used, a timeline of her disappearance that had more holes than facts. "I need everything," Vincent said. "Where she's been, who she's talked to, where she gave birth. Hospital records, travel logs, surveillance footage if it still exists. I want to know if she's telling the truth." Marco nodded. "And if she's not?" Vincent's expression went cold. "Then we deal with it. But quietly. Those kids don't see anything." "Understood." Marco hesitated. "Boss, people are already talking. Sal saw her. The housekeeper knows there are children in the North Wing. By noon, everyone in the organization will know Clara Martinez is back. Let them talk. The Corsetti family will hear about it. Your enemies." "I said let them talk." Vincent's voice carried an edge that made Marco straighten. "But double security on the house. Nobody gets within a quarter mile without clearance." And Marco: "Yeah, boss. This stays inside the family. If I find out anyone leaked this to the outside, I'll personally put a bullet in their head." Marco left without another word. Vincent stood and walked to the window. The sun was rising over the estate, painting everything gold and orange. Somewhere in the North Wing, his children, were waking up in a house they'd never seen, eating food they probably thought was a dream. His phone buzzed. A text from his consigliere, Anthony. "Heard you brought company home. We need to talk." Vincent ignored it. Instead, he headed upstairs, past oil paintings of men he'd never met, down a hallway lined with doors that led to empty rooms. The North Wing guest suite was at the end, guarded by two of his men, Tony and Ricci, who nodded as he approached. "Any problems?" Vincent asked. "Quiet as a church, boss," Tony said. "The lady asked for breakfast around 20 minutes ago. Maria's handling it." Vincent knocked softly. Clara opened the door, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Behind her, the twins sat at a small table, working their way through pancakes and fresh fruit. Sophia had syrup on her chin. Luca was building a tower out of strawberry slices. "Can we talk?" Vincent asked. Clara glanced back at the children, then stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. "They're safe here," Vincent said before she could speak. "I've doubled security. Nobody knows who they are." "Yet," Clara said quietly. "Yet," Vincent agreed. "That's why I need you to tell me everything again. Every detail you remember about that night, about the threat, about where you've been. My people are going to verify your story." Clara's face hardened. "You still don't believe me." "I want to believe you." The honesty in his voice surprised them both. "But 5 years ago, you disappeared with my money and my trust. Now you show up with 2 kids and a story about threats nobody else saw. You understand why I have to check." Clara wrapped her arms around herself. "What happens if your investigation proves I'm telling the truth? Then we figure out who really stole the money and who threatened you. And if it doesn't?" Vincent met her eyes. "Then we have a different conversation." The weight of that statement hung between them. "I volunteered at a community center," Clara said suddenly, "on 5th and Ashland, for the past 6 months. They know me as Carmen Diaz. I help single mothers fill out assistance forms, watch their kids, that kind of thing. If you want proof I wasn't living some secret life of luxury, start there." Vincent pulled out his phone and made a note. "What else?" "I worked at a laundromat on weekends. Antonio's. Cash under the table. And before that, I cleaned hotel rooms in Nevada under the name Sarah Chin. She was giving him breadcrumbs. A trail to follow. Either she was telling the truth, or she was the best liar he'd ever met. One more thing, Vincent said. The person who threatened you, did they call? Text? Just the note. Clara thought for a moment. Just the note. But Vincent, the photograph. It was taken the same day. I'd only been to the doctor 4 hours before I found it. Whoever sent it was watching me. They knew before I could even tell you. That detail lodged in Vincent's mind like a splinter. Someone had been watching Clara closely enough to know about the pregnancy within hours. Someone with access to his office. Someone inside his circle. The traitor wasn't just a thief. They'd been hunting his family before he even knew he had won. 3 days of digging produced a name Vincent hadn't expected. Marco spread the documents across Vincent's desk like a dealer laying out cards. Bank statements, wire transfers, surveillance photos, pieces of a puzzle that finally started making sense. The offshore account, Marco said, tapping a highlighted line. The one that received the $5 million? It's been active this whole time. Small withdrawals, nothing flashy. But here's what's interesting. 6 months after Clara disappeared, the account started sending monthly payments. $2,000, regular as clockwork. Vincent leaned forward. To who? That's the thing. The money went to various drop points, Western Union pickups, prepaid cards, cash transfers. But I traced the pickup locations. Marco pulled out a map marked with red dots. Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma. They match Clara's timeline almost perfectly. Vincent's jaw tightened. Someone was paying her to stay hidden, or paying her to keep quiet, Marco suggested. Either way, whoever controlled that account knew exactly where she was. And the account holder? Marco hesitated, and Vincent knew immediately this was the part his underboss didn't want to say. It was registered to a shell company. But I dug deeper, called in some favors with our guy at the bank. Marco slid over another document. The signatory authority, the person who could actually move the money, was added to the account 5 years ago. 1 week after Clara vanished, Vincent picked up the paper. The name on it made his blood run cold. Enzo Caruso. His lieutenant. The man he'd promoted after Clara disappeared, rewarding his loyalty during the crisis. The man who'd been by his side for 5 years, handling logistics, managing territories, sitting in on every major decision. You're sure? Vincent's voice was dangerously quiet. I triple-checked. It's his signature, his authorization codes. He's been controlling that account the whole time. Marco paused. There's more. I looked into his recent activity. Enzo's been making moves. Quiet ones. He's been meeting with people from the Corsetti family. The Corsetti family. Vincent's rivals. Always circling like sharks, waiting for weakness. What kind of meetings? I don't have details yet, but my source says it's about weapons. A big shipment coming through the port, your port, in 2 weeks. Enzo's been laying groundwork for months. Vincent stood and walked to the window, his mind racing. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture uglier than he'd imagined. Enzo hadn't just stolen the money. He'd framed Clara, threatened her, paid her to disappear, all while positioning himself as Vincent's most trusted man. And now he was dealing with the enemy, probably planning to take Vincent down from the inside. Does Enzo know we're investigating? Vincent asked.
No.
I kept it tight, just me and our banking contact. But boss, Marco's voice carried a warning. Enzo's been asking questions. About Clara, about the kids. Yesterday, he suggested we deal with the situation before it becomes a problem. Vincent's hands curled into fists. He wants them dead. He wants you vulnerable. If the Corsettis find out you have kids, Marco didn't need to finish. Everyone knew how this world worked. Family was leverage. Family was weakness. Family got you killed. Where is Enzo now? Checking on the warehouse district. He won't be back until tonight. Vincent turned from the window. Set up a dinner meeting. Tomorrow night at Carmelo's. Tell him I want to discuss the Corsetti situation, plan our next move. Make it sound normal, just business. Marco's expression darkened. You're going to confront him. I'm going to end him, Vincent said coldly. But first, I need to move Clara and the kids somewhere safe. Somewhere Enzo can't find them even if he tries. The countryside villa? Too obvious. What about the lake house? The one under my mother's maiden name?
Marco Nadid.
Nobody knows about that one. Not even Enzo. Good. Arrange transport for tonight. Private car, no security detail that reports to anyone but you. I want them gone before sunrise. As Marco moved toward the door, Vincent called out. Marco? When did you start suspecting Enzo? Marco stopped, his hand on the doorknob. Honestly? The night you brought Clara home. I saw his face when Sal mentioned it. He looked, Marco searched for the word. Scared. And Enzo doesn't scare easy. After Marco left, Vincent sat in the heavy silence of his study. 5 years. For 5 years, he'd trusted Enzo with his business, his territories, his life. The man had eaten at his table, stood beside him in wars with rival families, sworn loyalty with blood oaths that supposedly meant something. All of it lies. Vincent poured another whiskey, but didn't drink it. Instead, he stared at the amber liquid, thinking about Clara's hollow cheeks, Luca's tentative smile, Sophia's 2 old eyes. Enzo had almost destroyed them, almost killed his children before Vincent even knew they existed. Tomorrow night, at Carmelo's, there would be a reckoning. But tonight, Vincent had a different job. He had to tell Clara the truth, that the monster who'd hunted her wasn't some faceless enemy. It was the man who'd sat across from Vincent at breakfast, pretending to be family. Vincent found Clara in the villa's garden, watching the twins chase each other through the rose bushes. Morning sunlight caught in Sophia's dark hair as she shrieked with laughter. Luca tumbled onto the grass, giggling. They looked like normal kids. Happy kids. It felt wrong, somehow, like Vincent was watching someone else's life through a window. They've never had space like this, Clara said quietly, not turning around. She'd heard his footsteps on the gravel path. In the last apartment, we shared one room. Luca used to pretend the closet was a castle. Vincent stood beside her, hands in his pockets. Marco found something. About who took the money. Clara's shoulders tensed, but she kept her eyes on the children. Who? I can't tell you yet. Not until I handle it, Vincent paused. But you were telling the truth. Someone did frame you. Someone close to me. Clara finally looked at him. The relief in her eyes was so raw it hurt to see. I kept telling myself that someday you'd know. That someday you'd understand I didn't betray you, her voice cracked. But I stopped believing it. I should have looked harder, Vincent admitted. Should have trusted my instincts instead of the evidence. Would it have mattered? If you'd found me back then? Clara shook her head. You would have brought me back to this world. The same world that tried to kill us. She wasn't wrong. I need to move you and the kids, Vincent said. Somewhere safer. Tonight. We just got here. And the wrong people already know about it. I have a place, isolated, secure. You'll stay there until this is finished. Clara turned back to the children. Sophia was showing Luca a butterfly perched on her finger, both of them transfixed with wonder. And then what? You go back to your life, we go back to hiding. I don't know yet, Vincent said honestly. The silence stretched between them, filled with everything they weren't saying. 5 years of questions, accusations, missed moments, all of it hovering in the air like smoke. I need to go out today, Clara said suddenly. Before we leave. There's something I have to do. Vincent frowned. That's not safe. It's Tuesday. I volunteer on Tuesdays, Clara's voice was firm. At the community center on 5th and Ashland. There are women there who depend on me. Single mothers with nowhere else to go. I can't just disappear on them again. Clara. I've been disappearing from people's lives for 5 years, Vincent. I'm tired of running away without saying goodbye. She met his eyes. Come with me if you're worried. See what my life actually looks like. Against his better judgment, Vincent agreed. The community center was a converted church basement that smelled like instant coffee and industrial cleaner. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on walls decorated with children's drawings and inspirational posters with peeling corners. Vincent felt completely out of place in his $1,000 suit. Clara moved through the space like she belonged there, greeting women by name, hugging children who ran to her calling Miss Carmen. She'd introduced Vincent as an old friend, no names, no explanations, and the women had accepted it without question. He watched her help a young mother fill out housing assistance forms, her patience infinite as she explained each section. Watched her referee a dispute between two kids fighting over markers. Watched her sit with an elderly woman, just listening as the woman cried about an eviction notice. This was Clara's world now. Not expensive restaurants or designer clothes or the careful dance of mafia politics. Just survival. Basic, grinding human survival. "Your friend seems nice," a woman said beside him. She was maybe 30, with tired eyes and a baby on her hip. "Carmen talks about you sometimes." Vincent blinked. "She does. Not by name. But she told me once she left someone behind. Someone she loved but couldn't stay with because the world he lived in was too dangerous." The woman shifted the baby to her other hip. "She said it was the hardest choice she ever made." Vincent had no response to that. "She's a good person," the woman continued. "When I showed up here 6 months ago with nothing, I mean nothing, just me and Maya, and the clothes we were wearing, Carmen gave me the shoes off her feet. Literally. She walked home in socks so my baby could have formula." Something twisted in Vincent's chest. He'd spent 5 years believing Clara was a thief, a liar, someone who'd betrayed him for money. But here she was, giving away shoes she probably couldn't afford, volunteering time she didn't have, helping people who could never repay her. Clara caught his eye from across the room and smiled, small, uncertain, but real. In that moment, Vincent understood something he'd been too angry to see before. Clara hadn't just run away from him 5 years ago. She'd run toward something else. Toward being a mother. Toward safety. Toward a life where her children didn't have to learn how to spot undercover cops or memorize exit routes. She'd chosen them over him. And he couldn't even be angry about it anymore. That evening, back at the villa, Vincent called Marco into his study. The folder on his desk had grown thicker, more evidence, more damning proof of Enzo's betrayal. "It's worse than we thought," Marco said, dropping into a chair. "Enzo's been selling you out for months. The weapons deal with the Corsettis? He's giving them access to your shipping routes. And there's chatter that he's planning something big, something that happens soon." "How soon?"
Days, maybe.
"My source says Enzo's been moving pieces into place. He's positioning his own men at key locations, people loyal to him instead of you." Vincent's expression remained stone. "The dinner tomorrow, is it confirmed?" He accepted. "Carmelo's at 9. Private room, like you requested." Marco leaned forward. "Boss, he's going to know something's wrong the moment he sees your face. You can't hide what you know." "I'm not planning to hide it," Vincent said coldly. "I want him to know. I want him to see it coming." Marco nodded slowly. "What about Clara and the kids?" "They leave tonight."
2 hours from now.
"You'll drive them to the lake house personally, no one else. Stock it with everything they need for 2 weeks. After tomorrow, once Enzo's dealt with, I'll bring them back. And if the Corsettis retaliate, then we go to war. But at least Clara and the kids will be safe." Vincent stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky blood orange. "There's something else I need you to do." "Name it." "Enzo's been sending Clara money for 5 years. 2,000 a month." Vincent turned to face Marco. "I want to know if he ever made contact with her. Phone calls, messages, anything. If he threatened her directly, I need to know." Marco made a note. "I'll check her old phones if she still has them." "She does. Everything she owns fits in one bag." Vincent's voice carried an edge of bitterness, not at Clara, but at himself. At the situation. At 5 years of her struggling while he lived in luxury, believing lies. A knock at the door interrupted them. Clara stood in the hallway, the twins beside her. Luca clutched a stuffed bear that Maria must have found in storage. Sophia held her mother's hand. Marco said we're leaving, Clara said. I wanted to say thank you for everything. Vincent dismissed Marco with a nod. His underboss slipped out, closing the door behind him. You don't have to thank me, Vincent said. Yes, I do. Clara stepped into the study, the children staying close to her side. I know you still don't fully trust me. I know you're only protecting us because of them. But it's more than anyone else has done in 5 years. Vincent crouched down to the twins' level.
Hey.
You two ready for an adventure? Sophia nodded solemnly. Luca looked uncertain. Where are we going? Luca asked. Somewhere safe. A house by a lake with lots of trees. You can explore, play outside, be loud. Whatever you want. Will you come? Sophia's small voice cut straight through Vincent's defenses. The question hung in the air. Clara looked away, clearly not wanting to influence his answer. I have something I need to take care of first, Vincent said carefully. But after that, yeah, I'll come. Promise. Luca pressed. Vincent had learned long ago not to make promises he couldn't keep. In his world, promises were liabilities. They were weaknesses enemies exploited. But looking at his son, something fundamental shifted. I promise, Vincent said. Sophia smiled and threw her small arms around his neck. The gesture was so sudden, so trusting, that Vincent froze. When was the last time someone had hugged him without wanting something? Without fear or calculation behind it? He carefully hugged her back. When he stood, Clara was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Sadness, maybe. Or hope. Or some complicated mixture of both. The person who did this to us, Clara said quietly. When you handle it, will you be safe? The question surprised him. After everything, 5 years of running, poverty, fear, she was worried about him. I'm always safe, Vincent lied. Clara didn't believe him, he could see that. But she didn't push. Come on, babies, she said, taking their hands. Let's go pack. As they left, Sophia turned back one more time. Bye, Daddy. The word hit Vincent like a physical blow. Daddy. He'd been called many things in his life.
Boss. Sir.
Mr. Romano. Enforcer.
Monster.
But never that. Marco reappeared in the doorway. Cars ready. Vincent nodded, not trusting his voice. He watched from the window as Marco loaded them into an unmarked sedan. Clara held the twins close in the back seat. As the car pulled away, disappearing down the long driveway, Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in years.
Fear.
Not for himself.
For them.
Tomorrow night, he'd face Enzo. Tomorrow night, there would be blood. But tonight, for the first time in 5 years, his family was safe. And Vincent Romano would burn the world down to keep them that way. Carmelo's was empty, except for Vincent's men. The upscale restaurant occupied the ground floor of a building Vincent owned, all dim lighting and white tablecloths and the kind of privacy money bought. He'd cleared it for the night. No staff, no witnesses, just his inner circle positioned at strategic points throughout the space. Vincent sat alone in the private back room, a bottle of expensive wine on the table, untouched. At 9:03 p.m., Enzo arrived. He walked in wearing his usual confident smile, expensive suit perfectly tailored, gold watch catching the light. To anyone else, he looked like a successful businessman. Someone important. Vincent saw only a dead man. Boss, Enzo greeted, sliding into the chair across from him. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was hell. No problem, Vincent's voice was calm, measured. Wine. Sure. Vincent poured 2 glasses. His hand was steady. They made small talk for exactly 3 minutes, the Corsetti family's movements, territory disputes, the weather. Surface conversation, meaningless words filling space. Then Vincent set down his glass. I know what you did, Enzo. The smile didn't leave Enzo's face, but something shifted behind his eyes. A calculation. A reassessment. Boss. 5 years ago. The $5 million. Clara, Vincent's voice remained eerily calm. I know it was you. For a long moment, Enzo said nothing. Then, slowly, his smile widened into something uglier. Took you long enough. The admission hung between them like poison gas. Why? Vincent asked. It was the only question that mattered. Enzo leaned back in his chair, all pretense gone. Because you were weak. Are weak. You wanted to build something legitimate, make nice with the politicians, clean up the family business. He said the words like they were obscenities. This empire was built on blood, Vincent. Your father understood that. But you? You got soft. So you stole from me. Framed Clara. Threatened my children. I didn't know about the kids, Enzo said, and for the first time, Vincent heard something that might have been regret. Not until after. If I had, he shrugged. Doesn't matter now. The point is, I did what needed to be done. Removed your weakness. Positioned myself where I needed to be. To take over, Vincent said flatly. To lead, Enzo's voice carried conviction. The Corsetti family knows strength when they see it. They've been waiting for someone worthy. Someone who understands what this life really is. Vincent's jaw tightened. You sold me out to them. I formed an alliance. There's a difference. Enzo reached for his wine glass. In 2 days, the Corsettis take your ports, your warehouses, your territory, and you'll be. He never finished the sentence. Vincent's hand moved with practiced efficiency, pulling the pistol from his jacket and firing once. The gunshot was deafening in the small room, the bullet catching Enzo in the shoulder, spinning him backward. The wine glass shattered on the marble floor. Enzo clutched his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers, his face twisted with shock and rage. You. The door burst open, but it wasn't Vincent's men flooding in. It was Enzo's. 4 of them, guns drawn. Faces Vincent had trusted for years. Traitors, all of them, bought and paid for by Enzo's promises of power. Vincent dove behind the table as bullets tore through the air. Wood splintered. Glass exploded. The room erupted into chaos. Then Marco crashed through the opposite door with 6 of Vincent's loyal men. The firefight was brutal and close. In the confined space, every shot mattered. Vincent heard Tony go down with a scream. Saw Ricci put 2 bullets in one of Enzo's men before taking one himself. Enzo scrambled for the exit, still clutching his bleeding shoulder. Vincent pursued. They crashed into the main dining room, appending tables, sending chairs flying. Enzo grabbed a gun from one of his fallen men and fired wildly. A bullet grazed Vincent's arm, hot and sharp, but he didn't stop. He tackled Enzo near the bar, both of them going down hard. Enzo fought like a cornered animal, desperate, vicious, nothing held back. But Vincent had been fighting his whole life. He got his hands around Enzo's throat and squeezed. You almost destroyed my family, Vincent said, his voice cold as winter. You almost killed my children. Enzo's face turned purple. His hands clawed at Vincent's grip, weakening with each second. They would have been better off, Enzo gasped. Better off than having you as a father. Vincent squeezed harder. Behind them, the gunfire stopped. Marco stood in the doorway, guns still raised, surveying the carnage. 3 of Enzo's men lay dead. 2 of Vincent's were wounded but alive. Boss, Marco said quietly. Vincent looked down at Enzo's face, purple, eyes bulging, life draining away. He thought about Clara's hollow cheeks, Luca's tentative smile, Sophia calling him daddy. He thought about 5 years of lies. Vincent's grip tightened one final time. When Enzo stopped moving, Vincent let go. He stood slowly, blood on his hands, literal and metaphorical, and looked at the destruction around him. Clean this up, he told Marco. All of it. By morning, it's like tonight never happened. Marco nodded. And the Corsettis? Vincent's expression turned to ice. Send them a message. Tell them their inside man is dead. If they want war, we'll give them war. But they'll never touch my family. He walked out of Carmelo's without looking back. 3 days later, Vincent drove to the lake house alone. His arm was bandaged beneath his jacket. The bullet graze had required stitches, but nothing serious. Marco had handled the cleanup flawlessly. Enzo's body would never be found. His loyal men had been dealt with. The Corsetti family, after receiving Enzo's severed hand as a message, had backed off negotiations entirely. The empire was secure. But Vincent felt hollow. The lake house appeared through the trees, a modest cabin compared to the villa, but clean and safe. Smoke curled from the chimney. Someone had hung bird feeders from the porch, and Vincent could hear children's laughter echoing across the water. Marco's car was already there. His underboss stepped out as Vincent parked. "They're good," Marco reported. "Clara's been cooking, kids have been exploring the woods. No problems. The perimeter? Secure. Cameras at every access point. 2 men rotating watch from the ridge. Nobody's getting close without us knowing." Vincent nodded. "Take the rest of the day off. Go see your daughter." Marco's expression softened. He rarely got time with his own family. "You sure, boss?" "Yeah, I'm sure." After Marco left, Vincent stood on the gravel driveway, suddenly uncertain. He'd faced down rival families, survived assassination attempts, built an empire from blood and will. But walking up to that door felt harder than any of it. Before he could knock, it swung open. Lucas stood there, eyes wide. "You came. I promised, didn't I?" Luca grabbed his hand and pulled him inside. The cabin was warm, filled with the smell of something baking. Sophia sat at the kitchen table, coloring with fierce concentration. Clara stood at the stove, stirring a pot of sauce. She turned when she heard his footsteps, her expression guarded. "Vincent, Clara." An awkward silence fell, broken only by Luca tugging on Vincent's jacket. "Want to see what we found? There's a frog by the dock," and Sophia named him Gerald. Despite everything, Vincent smiled. "Gerald? He looks like a Gerald," Sophia said seriously, not looking up from her coloring. Vincent let Luca drag him to the window, where the boy launched into an elaborate story about the frog, the fish they'd seen, and the bird that had stolen Sophia's sandwich yesterday. Clara watched from the kitchen, wooden spoon still in her hand. Later, after the twins had exhausted themselves and fallen asleep on the couch, Vincent and Clara sat on the porch. The sun was setting over the lake, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. "Is it done?" Clara asked quietly. "The person who framed me? It's done." She nodded slowly. "Should I ask?" "No," Vincent said. "You shouldn't." Another silence, but this one felt different. Less hostile.
Just tired.
"I brought you something," Vincent said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. Clara opened it carefully. Inside was a key and a bank card. "The key is to a house in Portland," Vincent explained. "Quiet neighborhood, good schools nearby. The account has enough money to last years if you're careful. New identities for all 3 of you, legal ones, the kind that'll hold up to scrutiny." Clara's hands trembled. "Vincent, I can't." "You can. And you will." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "This life, my life, it's no place for them. You were right to run 5 years ago. You were protecting them." Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "What about you? What about me?
Do you
want to be part of their lives?" Vincent looked through the window at the twins, tangled together on the couch, Luca's arm thrown over his sister protectively even in sleep. "I don't know how to be a father," he admitted. "I don't know how to do anything except what I've always done." "You could learn," Clara said softly. "Could I?" Vincent turned to face her. "Every enemy I have will use them against me. Every choice I make puts them in danger. Enzo proved that. And there'll be others like him. There always are. So that's it? You just walk away." Vincent reached into his other pocket and pulled out a second item, a small flash drive. "This contains everything about Enzo. Bank accounts, offshore holdings, assets he accumulated from the money he stole. Vincent placed it in Clara's hand, folding her fingers around it. It's worth about $8 million. For their future. College, whatever they need. Clara stared at the drive, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'll visit, Vincent continued. When it's safe. Birthdays, holidays, whatever. They'll know who I am. But Clara, he met her eyes. You were right to choose them over me. And I'm choosing them too. Even if that means staying away. Vincent. Let them have a normal life. Let them be good. Better than me. Better than this world. His voice cracked slightly. Please. Clara threw her arms around him, and for the second time in a week, Vincent held someone who wasn't afraid of him. Thank you, she whispered. They sat like that as the sun finished setting, two people who'd loved and lost and found each other again, not as lovers, but as something else. Something harder and more important. Parents. When Vincent finally left, Sophia woke up just long enough to sleepily call out, Bye, Daddy. Come back soon. I will, Princess, Vincent promised. And for once, it wasn't a lie. As he drove away from the lake house, Vincent Romano, feared Mafia boss, ruthless enforcer, king of his criminal empire, looked in the rearview mirror at the life he was giving up. And for the first time in 20 years, he felt something close to peace. His empire would survive. His enemies would fall. The business would continue. But somewhere in Portland, two children with green eyes would grow up safe. And that was worth more than all the power in the world.